Welcome back to the DWC YouTube channel. It's 2021. It's a brand new year. We've got a brand new set coming out in a couple days. And today we're going to be talking about 5 new decks that I've been working on for Kaldheim Standard. Let's jump right into it. All right, before we get into things today, just want to take a moment to promote our podcast. It's a weekly Magic the Gathering strategy podcast that we post every Friday or Saturday. If you want to check it out, you can find us on every major podcast platform, the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. You can find everything to do with the DWC on our website at dwc.gg. Links to that will be in the description below. In our most recent episode of the show, we listed our top 10 favorite cards from the new set Kaldheim. If you want to check that out, like I mentioned before, every major podcast platform you can find it, or the website dwc.gg. That's the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. Also, just another big reminder, if you want to check out any of the deck lists that we talk about today, you'll be able to find a link to them in the description below as well. And if you want to see them in action, we're going to be streaming all day for the Kaldheim Early Access Streamer event on Twitch at twitch.tv/Disorganized Wizards Club. We'll be going live right at 11 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, January 27th. So you can check that out. Links to that will also be in the description below. Come shoot us a follow on Twitch. Come check out the stream. It's going to be a great day. Those events are always so much fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, if you like this kind of stuff on our YouTube channel, you want to see more content from us here, definitely subscribe to the channel, shoot us a like. I'm hoping this year to have a little bit more time so I can post videos more regularly on the channel, try and grow it a bit. So if you like this stuff, let us know. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Any feedback's appreciated. All right, let's not wait any longer. Let's get right into some deck lists. First one here, we have Jund Midrange. Now, a couple of my favorite cards from the new set are Valki, God of Lies, Goldspan Dragon, and Binding of the Old Gods. So I wanted to find a good shell to stick all of these cards in. And I think Jund is a good place to start. So obviously you have to play Jund to be able to fit all those colors in. But what Jund gives you access to is the food package, the Gilded Goose, Wicked Wolf, Trail of Crumbs. All of these cards work in tandem together that we've seen in Standard ever since they were printed into the format. And they do a really good job of buying you time and working your way towards your bigger threats. So cards like Goldspan Dragon will benefit a lot from this early game food package, and they really help you dominate the battlefield, which is what we want to be doing with this deck. Wicked Wolf, really hard to deal with threat. Just completely shuts down any aggression on the ground. Binding of the Old Gods, just clean answer to really any permanent that's giving us troubles. And then we're topping up our curve with the Goldspan Dragons to just fly over any ground threats, kill our opponent really quick. And it also kind of ramps us as well. If we need to ramp any harder, we have Garruk Cursed Huntsman and 1 Ugin the Spirit Dragon topping off our curve, as well as the flip side of Valki, God of Lies with Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. And, you know, the best part about playing Jund is you get to play one of the best red cards in the format, which is Bone Crusher Giant, which does a lot for helping you shut down low to the ground aggressive decks. All in all, I think this deck has the tools to be able to fight against all the decks that were popular in the format before Kaldheim came out. So I have high hopes for this one. I really do expect Binding of the Old Gods to be a huge player in the format going forward. Just being able to deal with anything is such huge gain, really big for a deck like this. And Garruk Cursed Huntsman is a card that I played with a decent amount at the start of last format when Zendikar Rising came out. And the card is just so powerful, and I really think it's just waiting for an opportunity to break out. And I think a shell like this is perfect. A perfect shell for Garruk Cursed Huntsman as a really powerful late game threat. When it comes to the sideboard for this deck, we just have some, generic sideboard cards to start off when we're not really sure what the format's going to look like. For Duress, I kind of do expect Control to see a bit of a boost. There's a lot of pretty good blue and white Foretell cards, some good pickups for Control. So we're going to start with For Duress. A couple Heartless Act, just good generic removal. Scavenging Ooze for any other graveyard decks that are in the format, which there might be a few based on some cards coming out. Lovestruck Beast, just another way to shut down early aggression or get a little bit aggressive if we need to. Extinction Event, catch-all for early aggression. A couple copies of Ox of Agonis for matchups like rogues that are going to be milling us. And then the Crow and War, a card that we've seen perform very well in matchups like Gruul aggro, which is not a deck I really expect to go anywhere. So all of this is the first draft of Jund Midrange. I'm looking forward to testing this one out for sure on Wednesday. Moving right along, this next list here is a spicy one. We're looking at Abzan Yorion. So in Search of Greatness is a card that when I read it the first time, I had alarm bells going off. It's historically being allowed to cast cards for free hasn't really worked out. And this card, while it's a lot more narrow than some of the mana generators we've seen in the past, I actually don't think it's as hard to get value out of as some people think it is. And in this shell, I think it's going to play a really important role. So with Abzan Yorion, we're also playing Doom Foretold. So we have a lot of permanents that we can get value off of by casting them for free within Search of Greatness, Golden Eggs, or Trail of Crumbs, Binding of the Old Gods. Getting an early Doom Foretold can be huge. And really, when it comes to In Search of Greatness, I actually think if we cast one card for free, I think it's totally worth it. And if the scrying from In Search of Greatness ends up not being what we want to do anymore in a game, we just have Doom Foretold, so we can use that as fodder to keep Doom Foretold around. So pretty standard Abzan Yorion package here. We have the food package again with Gilded Goose, Trail of Crumbs, Wicked Wolf, Charming Prince for the Yorion shenanigans, our Golden Eggs as well, part of the food package. Skyclave Apparition, Llanowar Visionary, just good, solid removal, solid ramp, cards that we would love to blink with Yorion. And then topping up our curve, we have our 3 Binding of the Old Gods, Elspeth Conquers Death, and a couple Garrett Cursed Huntsman again. Maybe this is a pet card of mine. Maybe we could be something else, but I'm convinced that I can make Garrett Cursed Huntsman work in some shell. When it comes to the sideboard, a few copies of Bloodchief's Thirst, just good catch-all, cheap removal. Heartless Act, same thing. Scavenging Ooze for the graveyard decks. The 4th copy of Elspeth Conquers Death. 4 Skyclave Shades for matchups that will be milling us, something like Rogues possibly, or just matchups when we want to get a little bit more aggressive, be a little more low to the ground. Elspeth's Nightmare, good for early aggression, and also decks that want to utilize our graveyard. This next deck is a spicy one. So if anyone listened to our top 10 episode from Kaldheim this past week, Cosima is a card that we have on our list that is it's a very interesting card. So I think this card has a lot of potential and is really powerful. I just couldn't really think of a good way to utilize it. And I think playing it in a Landfall deck is most likely the best place for it in Standard. Obviously, the card is super good with fetch lands, so we're playing all 8 that are available to us, 4 Fabled Passage, 4 Evolving Wilds. And we're throwing it into this Landfall shell, which is a deck that has seen some fringe play in Standard, but hasn't quite been there. We're taking advantage of Felidar Retreat and Scoot Swarm to go wide, take advantage of our Landfall. We also have Lotus Cobra, Marasa Root Grazer, just additional cards that get value off Landfall, ramp us, or enable us to get more Landfall triggers. Kazandu Mammoth, just perfect Landfall creature that's also a land. And then I have 2 versions of this deck. So we have just straight Bant. We're playing Cosima as our only blue card in the main deck. Yasharn, Scavenging Oozes, Skyclave Apparitions, Glass Casket, Vivian Monsters Advocate. It's pretty close to the deck that we've seen before. But I also have a version of the deck that's a little more greedy, just because I wanted to include one of my favorite cards from the new set, Binding of the Old Gods here. So this one is straight 4 colors. We're playing green-white base, splashing blue for Cosima, and then splashing black for the 4 Binding of the Old Gods and 4 Mythos of Nethroi. In this list, the Mythos of Nethroi are just straight up replace the Skyclave apparitions. We want to... Mythos and Nethroi is just easier to cast in this deck, and it catches more permanents than Skyclave apparition does, and so it seemed like a slam dunk swap for me. And then Binding of the Old Gods is another just catch-all removal spell that actually has significant value in this deck. We get value out of all 3 chapters: killing any non-land permanent, searching our library for a forest card, it's an additional landfall trigger, and creatures you control gain death touch at end of turn. We're just going to have a lot of scenarios where we have a lot of small creatures lying around after all of our landfall triggers, so could be good to get in some damage with that ability. So out of both these decks, I like the 4-color version more just because it's a little more speed, but it's definitely more greedy. You are playing a lot of tap lands in these decks. We've got a bunch of Triomes. Our Evolving Wilds are always tap lands as well, but I think something like this could be a contender, and I'm really interested to get some games in with Cosima because it's a super interesting card. We've never really seen anything like it. And yeah, like I mentioned before, I just wasn't really sure how to get the most value out of this, but I do think these landfall builds are a good place to start because you can get value out of both halves of the card, right? Playing it with fetch lands means you're going to get a lot of voyage counters on the front half of the card early, or if you're casting as its backside, which is the vehicle, I still have a whole bunch of small creatures around that are able to crew it and attack. And being a landfall deck, playing lands from my opponent's deck, if somehow I don't have a land drop myself, that fits right into our game plan, right? So seems like a perfect fit. We'll try this one out for sure. Both builds, just straight Bant or the greedier version with the 4 colors. We'll see what happens, but sideboards, again, pretty generic. When it comes to the 4-color deck, we have black, so we have the 4 Duress, 2 Heartless Axe, couple Negates, Scavenging Ooze, a Chainweb Arachneer, Elspeth Conquers Death, and then 1 Redain, God of the Worthy. This is a card that I expect in most white decks we'll see at least a copy of if snow decks are any reasonable part of the format. Looking at the Bant sideboard, a lot of the same cards. Instead of the black cards, we have another Chainweb Arachneer, Glass Caskets, Gem Razors, and Ugin. Just more array of green and white cards. Moving on to deck number 4, we have black-white Clerics. So Clerics was a deck that we tried out early on last format when Zendikar Rising came out. It wasn't quite there. Creatures weren't quite good enough, but the deck does have a decent amount of good pickups coming with Kaldheim. We have Righteous Valkyrie, which fits pretty well into our life gain game plan with something like Speaker of the Heavens and Cleric of Life's Bond. Also being a pump effect for our entire team in a deck that we're playing a lot of 1-drops and a lot of 2-drop small creatures. Seems to slot exactly into what we want to be doing with Clerics. Glorious Protector, also another Cleric that acts as protection for point and click removal spells or wraths. It's a card I really like a lot, and I'm excited to play with. And then Rally the Ranks, a new Honor the Pure card, the 2 mana creatures you control of a chosen type get +1/+1. Fits right into what we want to be doing with Clerics, right? We're playing 8 1-drops, we're playing 8 2-drops, we have a pseudo-aggressive game plan of gaining life and attacking, so it maybe Rally the Ranks isn't what we want to be doing, but I think this is a good place to start with the deck. Being aggressive, it's trying to kill our opponent. We could go a little bit bigger with a build, play less 1-drops, don't play Rally the Ranks, play more removal spells, maybe some Elspeth Conquers deck or Planeswalkers. But for the first draft of this deck, I wanted to be aggressive and just try and kill people. So this is where we landed. I'm not too sure if Archfiend's Vessel is right for this deck. The only ways we have to bring it back are the 3 Null Priest of Oblivion and our 4 Agadeem's Awakening. That's probably enough. I mean, it is a 1-mana lifelinking creature that is good to pump with Luminarch Aspirant. It's good to pump with Rally the Ranks. Gains life for our Speaker of the Heavens, so it's probably just fine. Not really sure. We'll see. There are cards we could play to get a little bit more value of it, but this is where I wanted to start with the deck. So this is where we'll start. We'll try it out on Wednesday, see what happens, make some adjustments from there. When it comes to the sideboard, again, 4 Duress, 2 Heartless Act, 2 Elspeth's Nightmare for Graveyard Hate, catch most things, removal spell with Skyclave Apparition, a couple more copies of Glorious Protector for playing against a deck that has a lot of removal or is playing a lot of Wrath, trying to wrath our creatures away, a Redain God of the Worthy for the snow decks, Heliod's Intervention, Artifacts, Enchantments, and then Akaya the Inexorable if we want just a big, hard to deal with threat Planeswalker that can do a lot of cool things in our strategy. Now, wrapping up our decks for today, deck number 5, we have blue-white Foretell Flash. Tons of new cards from Kaldheim in this one. Playing just a straight blue-white Flash strategy. We have Cosmos Charger, the 4-mana Flash Foretell, I guess kind of Lord, but not really a Lord. Reduces the costs of our Foretell cards. We have Glorious Protectors, another Flash threat with Foretell. Rounding out the creatures, for Skyclave Apparition, of course, because the card is so good. A couple Brazen Borers as another flying Flash threat. And then 1 Alrund, God of the Cosmos. Not really sure on this one, but it felt wrong to not include at least 1 copy of that card in a deck called Foretell. So outside of that, other Foretell cards we're playing, a couple copies of Raven Form, which is a pretty cool iteration of the Pognify effect. I think it could be pretty good in a deck like this. 4 copies of Saw It Coming. Of course, Foretell Counterspell, we're going to include that. And then 4 copies of Behold the Multiverse, the Foretell, scry 2, draw 2 cards. Fits right into this deck. A couple copies of Doomscar, just in case. We aren't playing too many creatures, and there are going to be a lot of scenarios where we just don't cast anything till turn 4. We're just spending our early turns foretelling cards. So against aggressive decks, having a couple copies of this card in the main deck fits pretty well into our game plan. We can foretell it on turn 2, cast it on turn 3, and then start casting Flash threats on our turn 4+. Shark Typhoon fits perfectly into our Flash game plan. Can cycle it early for cards, and it's just a huge scaling late game threat. Last new card in our main deck, we have a couple copies of Nico Eris. Not really sure if this card is any good, but we'll see. Just occlusion to see how it performs. I imagine it's fine. We don't really have any interactions with the shards that it produces, but I do like the idea of, flashing in a Glorious Protector to protect a creature, plussing on Glorious Protector, attacking, bouncing the Protector back to my hand and getting my creature back, and then having a Protector again to protect it again. Saying protect a lot. Also like the idea of plussing on a Brazen Boar to be able to pick it back up and bounce more stuff. Seems pretty cool to me. In the mana base, we have a couple new cards as well. New Blue-White Pathway, Slam Dunk Conclusion, and we have the Gates of Isfel, which is monocolor tap land with the blue-white activated ability to gain 2 life, draw 2 cards. Seems like a free roll in a straight 2-color deck like this. Rounding out the sideboard, cheap counter spells, Disdainful Stroke, Negate, 4 copies of Glass Casket for those aggressive decks, a couple copies of Redain, God of the Worthy, again, considerations for snow, 2 more copies of Doomscar for those aggressive decks, 2 copies of ECD, and 1 Shark Typhoon to round out for other control Flash matchups where we don't really want to be committing mana to anything aside from Flash threats. All right, and that wraps up our video. 5 new decks for Kaldheim Standard. If you like what you see, like I mentioned before, like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all of the support. If you want to check out the decks, all the links are in the description, and we'll be streaming every single deck I talked about, plus a bunch more, this Wednesday, January 27th, twitch.tv/Disorganized Wizards Club for the Kaldheim Early Access event. Hope to see you there. It's going to be a great time. Every early access event that we've participated in has been so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And on that note, thanks for checking out the video. Catch you guys in the next one.